Good afternoon, Packers fans. Aaron Nagler here with your Packers Daily Chat, coming to you live on the Cheesehead TV social channels. Happy Victory Monday. It's been a while. It's been over a month since we could celebrate a Packers Victory Monday. Here we are after a scintillating victory over the Cincinnati Bengals. You'll note the sarcasm. I understand it wasn't the ass kicking many of us were hoping for, but still a win. Big win for the Green Bay Packers. And great to go back and watch the game and see why and how some of it played out. Certainly, there were frustrations on both sides of the ball. Defense, in particular, down the stretch, being unable to get a stop. But at some point, you do have to acknowledge that guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they're pretty good. They're pretty good, and they made some plays, and they had a vet quarterback throwing them the ball. Um, but overall, yeah, I thought going back and watching it, because something I kept coming back to last night, both in my post-game chat and then online chatting with folks, it did feel like I watched a very different game than some people because, clearly, obviously, the defense couldn't get off the field there, those final couple drives that Cincinnati went down, scored a touchdown, etc. But for the most part, the offense, was there answering every single time, keeping it a two-score game. There was no moment where it felt like the Packers weren't in control of that football game. And going back and watching it again today kind of reinforced that fact. And I get in the moment as fans, we get nervous, and especially as Packers fans, we've seen things fall apart in a bad way. But yeah, there was never a moment in that game yesterday where it felt like the Packers were, not in control. Now, one of the biggest kind of headlines coming out of that game clearly is going to be Matthew Golden and his output over 100 yards from scrimmage, both in receptions and running the football. But man, just his ability, the sync he's in with Jordan Love already, 5 games into their kind of time together. It's really exciting. And the prospect of getting Christian Watson back next week and starting to open up the offense a little bit more, which I suspect we'll see. Arizona's a lot more multiple than what we saw yesterday from Cincinnati. And that was part, I think, of fans' frustrations is how much quick game underneath, quick stuff Jordan was throwing. They weren't really able or didn't really desire to try to attack downfield because of all the too high safety stuff that the Bengals were running. I think there'll be more opportunities next week against Arizona, and Golden should be a big part of that. He's certainly shown that it doesn't matter where he catches the football. It doesn't matter if it is a go route up the left sideline or if it's something like a dig underneath that he can turn into an explosive play. Just get the ball in his hands and good things will happen. I know we're all very frustrated with the number of end arounds and jet sweeps that we've seen from LaFleur's offense, but there was one in particular where Golden did a great job of getting through the seal block and then bouncing off and making yards after contact, like a running back almost. Kid is exciting, and it seems like they're opening it up for him just a little bit more each and every week. And we just heard from LaFleur at the podium talk about how he has really risen his game over the course of the last kind of obviously 2 ball games, but certainly yesterday was the best example of his understanding of the offense and when to, stick with whatever it is your rules are and things like that. But then also when you get off schedule and how to be in sync with the quarterback, as we saw in that big 3rd down reception from Jordan to Golden there late in the game. It's exciting. And the fact that it's only the beginning for Matthew Golden is incredibly, incredibly promising. So, like I said, I know there were frustrating moments, but again, going back and watching it, the Packers were in control the entire game. And I understand the misgivings about the defense in the second half. It's certainly something that the Packers will undoubtedly continue to look at. But yeah, that was a promising first step out of the bye week. Hopefully knock the rust off now, especially some of the guys that haven't played as much due to injuries, and get rolling here and put together a couple 2-tree wins here in this part of the schedule. 1 or 2 updates health-wise coming out of that game. Lucas Van Ness thankfully avoided a long-term / serious injury, though LaFleur couldn't give any update as to how long he would be out, but it doesn't sound like it's a season ender, which is great. Now, that doesn't preclude, and he didn't rule out the idea of possibly putting Van Ness on IR. That's something to watch for later this week, see obviously what his availability is for practice, and then what they do on Saturday when they kind of make their roster adjustments. But not a season ender, not anything long-term, which is great. And the other note injury-wise is Javon Bullard, who I know we saw leave with seemed to be, I think he was listed with a concussion. He is not in concussion protocol. Bullard spoke with LaFleur after the game and said it felt like more of a stinger. That he was cleared by the medical staff, so he is not in the protocol, and he will be available to practice when they get back out there. Um, I didn't hear. I don't think Matt was asked, and I didn't get an update on Dontavian Wicks, who I know did leave yesterday's game, but hopefully we'll get something more on that either as the evening goes on or tomorrow or Wednesday when they get back to practice. Before I get to your questions and your comments, I do want to give a note on Carry the G Radio. I have zero doubt that some of you, those of you who are interested in Carry the G Radio, have undoubtedly noticed that 97.3 The Game in Milwaukee has been turned into a pop music station. Literally, they flipped a switch. iHeart has changed things around on a lot of folks. However, everyone who's been working with 97.3 The Game will continue to broadcast on their Madison station and a couple other spots throughout the state. Carry the G Radio will continue. Billy and I won't be broadcasting tomorrow. We will be broadcasting Thursday. And then after that, we'll get back to our regular Tuesday routine. Just didn't want to have anyone be surprised when we're not on the air tomorrow and think the worst. We are going to continue. And here's the other part. Even if it were to end, and I don't think it's going to end anytime soon as far as what they're doing there, all the folks at 97.3 The Game in Madison now, everything they're doing, they do great work. I've met a lot of great people partnering with them. We've had a really good relationship with everyone there in Milwaukee, and I suspect we'll continue to for however long they're continuing to be on the air. There I have no information, but I do want to give a shout out to Billy for partnering with us and being part of the Cheesehead TV family, so to speak, because I've really gotten to love talking to him every week about the Packers. And whatever happens on that end, Billy and I are going to keep going. Like, the podcast won't stop. So whenever they end up doing whatever they're going to do long term, and if Billy's not on the radio anymore, we are still going to be podcasting. So don't think that he's going away anytime soon. I also want to give a shout out to Drew Olson, who was literally the first person who ever approached us about a potential partnership. He was kind of instrumental in having us part of the team, brought it into the fold, trying to help, get that entity off the ground, so to speak. And Drew was great and has been a great partner. And to that point, I'll still be on with Drew and KB every Friday throughout the season. So, like I said, that station itself, 97.3 The Game in Milwaukee, not a sports station anymore, but that doesn't mean the radio isn't still broadcasting there in Madison and other places. And we'll still be here when I'm live with Billy on the Cheesehead TV YouTube channel. So just like I said, didn't want anyone thinking anything when we're not on the air tomorrow. We'll be on Thursday and then Tuesdays going forward. All right, everybody, what's going on? Let's get to your questions, comments, concerns, whatever, and whoever and however. What's going on, Michael? Thanks for being a Carry the G Club member. Appreciate you. Good news, Nags. Got my postcard from the Packers today. Only about 138,000 in front of me. I should have those tickets in no time. It's funny you mention that. Every time I come here, every time I come to Green Bay, I think there's a moment where I think to myself, oh, I should check out the ticket office because I haven't checked in where I am on, because I've been on the list for 20 years. And I always think I should check in, but I continue to forget to do so because I'm pretty sure I'm still at least like 20,000 away. So congratulations on your postcard and for only being 138,000 out. A lot of ball game left, that is to say. Go Pack. Thanks for the super chat, man. How has Carrington looked on tape this year? Aggressive, feisty, out of position at times, over aggressive at times. Certainly you like the attitude, or at least I like the attitude. I know your mileage may vary. I do think sometimes he gets out of position because he's so eager to make a play. I also think he's kind of a bit caught in no man's land sometimes where, the call is whatever zone they're running, right? And he's unable to use kind of the length and the strength that is, I think, the best part of his game. And like some of the more sudden receivers in the league give him fits, no doubt about it. But I like how he battles, and I loved his attitude with Jamar Chase yesterday. I know in the moment you get upset because you're like, oh, don't wake a sleeping beast or whatever. But, you go back and you watch the game dispassionately, not kind of involved in win and loss like you just watching football and kind of the mechanics of it and all that. I thought he played his ass off in that regard. Um, and I get the young man being excited, and wanting to jaw and getting hyped up, hyping himself up. Obviously, as the old saying goes, there's a thin line between, you know, crazy and nuts. There's like he was flirting with it, no doubt about it. But I do think that there are plenty of situations where you can see um, his talent, but I do think every once in a while his aggressiveness gets him into trouble. And hopefully, with more playing time, that will be kind of evened out as the year goes on. I will say though, it's got to be tough. Got to be tough in and out of the lineup. Sometimes in there, sometimes not. Different situations, different opponents, different calls that you haven't maybe run all day, and then all of a sudden you're thrown in there. Um, it's that's difficult, and I don't want to pretend like it's easy, like it's mad, and you just switch somebody and it's doing the exact same thing, right? Um, but I do think there's little doubt that he can play in the league. Is he going to be a premier corner in his life? Probably not, but you can win with him. Nathaniel, what's up? We have 2 kickers? Apparently. I just love that cat was like, was about to become a substitute teacher, and then the Packers signed him. Kind of a wild life, right? He was legit, flying all over the country, trying out for teams, thinking, yeah, I'm probably going to have to be a substitute teacher. And then there he is in Lambeau, being perfect on the day. Bless him, man. H. Carrington, how are you, man? Many wanted to see Jordan use his legs more this year. I wanted to see him do it without fumbling as much as he did his first year. So far, so good. Why you got to put that out there, man? I'm kidding. You're right. You're 100% right. He has been much better in that regard. I would have liked to have seen him go for that first down there at the end when he slid short of the sticks. But other than that, I thought he was phenomenal with his legs yesterday. And I do think, to your point, it has not only helped, in on passing downs when the opponent plays man, they got their backs to him. He has done a really good job of kind of taking what's given there and utilizing his legs to not just get outside the pocket and maybe make a play, but taking what's available to him with green grass in front of him. And most importantly, he has been very good at picking up first downs on third down with his legs, where maybe things are covered up. Maybe they got a coverage they weren't expecting. And he has made, some really big time conversions with his legs that keep your drive alive, give you more opportunity to score points. It's no secret, they're putting up these touchdowns in the second half because they're extending drives. They're getting more opportunities, and some of that is because Jordan's using his legs. So I'm with you. And to your point, he has done a much better job of holding onto the football or not getting into situations where the ball might get jarred loose, hit loose, whatever. Now we've talked about it. That means he'll cough it up in Arizona. So just remember, H. Carrington, that's on you, man. Ed, what's up? Just want 40 plus every game in the D, not allowing opponents to cross the 50-yard line. Should be easy. I did think, Ed, about that line, and I've talked about this before, that line from Remember the Titans when the defensive coordinators, they don't gain another yard. And then they go out and do that. Like, it'd be amazing if that was life, right? If Jeff Hafley was up in the booth going, all right, they don't gain another yard. And then the Packers just did that. It'd be awesome. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. But yeah, man, 40 plus a game. They don't cross the 50. Sounds like a recipe for success to me. Joe, what's up, man? What's the best approach for the Packers to grab the NFL's attention regarding Micah Parsons being held? Joe, that is an excellent question, and I legit tried to give Matt LaFleur an opportunity to maybe tee off on that just now when I was across the street in Matt's press conference. He took the high road, as you pretty much would expect him to do. But I don't think there's much the Packers can do other than, what traditionally is done is you send a reel into the league and say they're XYZ. These are the plays that are questionable and or egregious. Because Matt did say, there are obvious egregious plays that are not being called that is affecting the game clearly. I don't beyond that though. There's not a whole lot the Packers can do, but one of the things that sometimes happens is things become a narrative, right? Things become an ongoing talking point, so to speak, around the league, whether that is through the media or even behind closed doors. And then maybe, perhaps, that filters through and the officials start going, I mean, I guess I should look at this closer. And then they throw a flag or two. But with that said, we've gone through a couple years now of the running joke being that the Chiefs get all the calls and the refs are in on it and all that. And I think we just came off a Sunday Night Football game where the Chiefs didn't have a single call against them. So it may be completely futile, man. There might be nothing they can do. Dennis, what's up? Shout out to you and Corey for the Cheesehead TV meetup at Heigemeister. Plenty of cold carry the G and lots of Cheesehead friends and some Bengals fans. There were some Bengals fans there. It was great to see you, Dennis, along with everyone who came out. Really appreciated hearing from so many people from literally all over the country and a few people from across the globe. Always kind of amazing to hear folks talk about how they became Packers fans, how they found out about Cheesehead TV, and whether they watched the watch party or they listen to Transplants or whatever. There was one gentleman I spoke with who has literally been listening to Transplants since our very first episode. And that was mind-blowing to me. That was a long time ago. But the fact that people stick with it and stick with us and are, interested in the beer and things like that, it's just amazing. And like I said, it's always great to hear from so many of you and all the people who can't make it, who message me and say, really wish I could be there, etc., are always asking when's the next one. Well, the next one is during Vikings weekend for Patreon members and Carry the G Club members. We have our annual meetup. So if you are a Patreon member or a Carry the G Club member, the information will be on your respective pages very soon. Cheeto, what's up, man? LaFleur's offseason practice using the challenge flag is showing so far. Clearly, he's got good form, seems to be making good decisions. Got to keep it up. Kuzino's here. What's up, Kyle? Sorry I missed it on Saturday. I was out of town and didn't make it home in time. It's Kyle. It's all right, brother. I know I'll see you soon. I know I'll see you next time I'm in town. If I miss you once, I know I'll see you the next time. It's all good. Peter, this is a very good question. What was your takeaway in the third quarter with the Bengals had that long drive eating most of that quarter? I was a little surprised that this defense allowed that. They did an excellent job of paper cutting the Packers defense. And I do suspect that this will continue to be the approach as it has been certainly for the last two games and somewhat kind of throughout all 5 games. When you're content to get 2-3 yards, a opportunity, right? And then make things happen after the catch or after contact, you can live in manageable down and distances. And I do think, especially with a quarterback as seasoned as Joe Flacco or as experienced and talented as Dak Prescott, you're going to have those games where they know where to go with the ball. I do think we saw a little bit more from the secondary in regards to breaking on the ball, trying to get, some disruption at the top of the route or when the ball was arriving. But they also have 2 all-world receivers, right? And the Packers certainly don't have any all-pro corners. So they were going to get theirs at times, and they did. I think the concerning part from that drive, you don't typically see, I think it was 17 plays. And if I can recall, I don't think there was any egregious penalties against either team, but certainly against the Bengals, which is what typically tends to derail those types of drives. I think maybe there was one. But even with that, typically you say, okay, if you can drive, 10 minutes, 17 plays, blah, 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 hat tip, right? And that's what they did. And they had to convert a 4th down. Hell, the touchdown was scored on 4th down, And that gets back to something we talked about this summer. In that 3rd down call, you had to know. They were going to try and get into 4th and short, 4th and goal from the 2 or whatever, which is what they ended up doing little button route from the tight end. There he gets tackled. Now it's, 4th and goal from the 2. Just that kind of mentality is frustrating when the Packers don't seemingly play to that mindset. I also think looking at the totality of the second half, um, there are certainly moments where you would hope the defensive backs will be able to make a play on the ball with more frequency. Like I said, I think they did a better job overall in the game, but in the second half, you know, first Flacco made a number of really nice throws on 3rd down, and receivers just made plays on the ball, and the Packers were unable to. Now, the kind of sum of that 10-minute drive, the frustration for me is, it didn't seem like the Packers were great at getting the ball carrier on the ground after the initial hit. There were so many instances where if they're running up the middle, initial contacts made after 2 yards and he's dragging guys for 3-4 yards, or there's a smoke out in the flat, receiver takes the ball, gets hit, maybe at 1 yard gain, but then falls forward or drags a guy for 3 or 4, or even 5 yards. That is hitting yardage. That is keeping the offense ahead of the sticks. Packers have to do a much better job of stopping momentum and getting guys locked up and on the ground. Because every time that happens, you're keeping the playbook open for the offense, for Flacco, as opposed to getting them into a 3rd and 10 plus where you can't have Micah Parsons pin his ears back and you can play flat-footed in the secondary. But when it's 2nd and 3, 3rd and 2, the whole playbook, and especially if they're going for it on 4th down, the whole playbook is open to them. And it's harder to, take those risks and make that kind of dictating mentality on defense when they could legit be dialing up anything. So that to me is something that they've got to address and they've got to do a better job of. And especially between the tackles, this is what I talked about on Good, Bad, and the Ugly. They have to do a better job inside. And even if they're not, because I know I've seen a lot of people talk, they only gave up 55 rushing yards. That is true. But man, they were effective yards at keeping them ahead of the sticks. That's something that has to change. They have got to get guys on the ground and not let them have so much kind of yardage after contact, whether it's the run game or the passing game. That hurt them in that drive in particular, but throughout the game, really. What else we got here, folks? Vin V, how are you, man? On second watch, did overthrow to Musgrave look like a miscommunication? That next throw to Golden was a dime, so the inconsistency can be confusing. No, I mean, it certainly looked that way, but, Love said after the game it wasn't a miscommunication. Musgrave did nothing wrong. Like, he just missed it. He just sailed it. I hear you, man. That's what it looked like to me, too. But he just said, yeah, just missed the throw. And that happens at times. Like you said, it comes back the very next play and has one of his prettiest, nicest completions and throws of the year. Sometimes, it just slips out of your hand a little bit funny and you live with it and you move on to the next play. And I was heartened today to hear that LaFleur said, coming into the game, they wanted to get Musgrave a little bit more involved, but the defense didn't present them the same kind of looks and coverages they were expecting at times. So I do think they're going to try to get a few more looks for Musgrave going forward. That I think, utilize his speed a little bit could be exciting. Definitely. All right, everybody, I'm going to have to get going. Cannot thank you enough for hanging out, talking Packers each and every day, Monday through Friday, right here on the Cheesehead TV social channels. Please do me a monster favor. Hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and then tell your friends and tell your family. Cheesehead TV, we are devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great night. Go Pack Go.